Hey, so I'm going to have a walkthrough of networks, peer support networks, teams, and communities of practice in this short video. I'm going to talk around some of the work that the East London SendNet is part of. To place it in context and to give a bit of flesh to the somewhat abstract nature of what we're talking about. The systems and the structures that we're looking at aren't physical. They are relationships between components. So for the sake of clarity and simplicity, it is somewhat boiled down. So please forgive that. Okay, so it all starts with an individual, so a person, and in our context, it's a family caregiver, normally a parent carer of a disabled child or a child with special educational needs, although it's not always the case. It can be grandparents or aunts or uncles, family friends, etc. Whoever is providing care to the child within the family context. And from there, we have another family caregiver enter the picture. And the relationship between the two intrinsically means that they are peers, P-E-E-R-S, peers. This is quite an important feature of community life, and peers are something that peerhood is something that is integral to how people relate to each other. And as we go along, we can see that's my daughter in the background, by the way. She's actually having a good time. We can see as the peers get to know other peers within the community, then informal relationships or connections then are formed between each of the family caregivers. Not everybody knows everybody, of course. Some people know more than one person. It depends on the activity or how often that person turns up to meetings and that kind of thing. Now, the coloured lines, the coloured connections, represent the peer that has gone through an introductory coaching session on the Enable model of association. Enable is the model of association, or the listening model, that the East London SendNet uses in order to facilitate the support aspect of the network. If it didn't have the support aspect, then it would be a peer network, something that's legitimate and incredibly important within the community and within society at large. However, what we're talking about is a peer support network. So Enable stands for empathic, non-judgmental, active, boundaried listening. And network members participate in ongoing coaching with Enable through a variety of different means, some of which we will touch on a little bit later in this presentation. So as the connections grow and the family caregivers, the parent carers get introduced to the network and then introduced to the idea of the Enable model, then the network members, they have their one-page profiles, which are done by using the Enable model. So one network member or myself going through the one-page profile development with the new parent carer to the network. And whilst we do that, we coach on Enable, and then that is almost like a ticket or license into the East London SendNet. And then from these Slack connections where the support is being provided, we pull the connections taught, and by pulling the connections taught, we create a team. So looking at this one, this could represent um, a program we're doing called Early Positive Approaches to Support. The acronym for that is EPATS. And that's been done in collaboration with the University of Kent. The Tizard Centre is a research centre attached to the University of Kent. The Newham Send Hub, which is commissioned by the London Borough of Newham, and several children's centres within the borough. And the East London CentreNet, the network members, are work in the children's centres to co-facilitate an 8-week parenting programme, early intervention parenting programme with children centre staff. So what we can see within this team is that the connections then proliferate amongst the members as they work together, and as they're trained, they then get to know each other. So the connectivity increases within the network due to the specific activity of the team. And then when that activity is over, the tautness of the connection goes slack. However, we can see that all of the connectivity still remains within the network members. Significantly more connections that there were before that team activity. And then as time goes on, it could be the summer holidays is happening, 6 weeks of general wilderness, particularly with operational co-delivery. It's not something that that's operative during the 6-week holiday, because we're looking after our children. But as time goes by, new peers will then come into the picture, maybe parents whose children have just received a diagnosis, and then those informal connections then start to occur again. And then some of those, not all of them, are then integrated within the network. They're coached in the Enable model, and they have their one-page profile developed. And then we can see another team occurring here. So this is where a different opportunity arises. We've recently got involved in the Expert by Experience program as part of the Transforming Care program in the northeast London. Actually, it goes across the whole of London, and this is something that we've just got involved in, and we've had several network members go through the application for their Experts by Experience, where they essentially go into care and treatment reviews with a clinical specialist to support a family whose child may be in crisis or may be at the risk of going into residential care. So that's co-delivered essentially, and then the team that is formed are there to support each other, because this can be I imagine this can be quite a difficult and trying experience to witness and to be part of. So the peer support network is there to support its members, both informally and formally. And then the connections go slack when that isn't happening, or when the activity ceases, i.e. summer holidays or Christmas holidays, etc. And then the connections will be pulled taut again when the team leaps back into action in the new term, etc. But I think the real key point to remember is, because they're part of the peer support network, they've always got connectivity, and they're always providing that support through the Enable model. New peers come into the experience, into the picture, and connections are formed. And what we can see here is something related, slightly different to networks and teams. And this is when you pull all of the connections taught within the network. So when you draw on the network, you draw on the connections, and you pull them all taught, and you create a community of practice. So this community, it could meet every 6 weeks. every half term, or it could meet every term. It could just meet once a year. It really depends on that community of practice and who wants to pull the connections taut. Somebody could be in the network and decide that they want to develop a community of practice over specific things. So it could be educational healthcare plans, and they wanted to get a whole room of people together where they use certain facilitative techniques, such as exhibited or represented in the liberated structures work, to generate ideas. So, for example, and I haven't built this into the diagram because it's super complicated, but the fishbowl method to generate ideas and problem solve, or the troika method, or the 1, 2, 4 all method, etc. So that's a community of practice, and then as the community of practice dissipates, the connections go slack again, and once again the people keep in contact until another opportunity or something else arises. But essentially, the network, the Slack connections, are the asset-based peer support, which is the foundation of our activity. It's entirely sustainable. It doesn't cost money. It only involves relationships. And if money comes along into our experience, if somebody has money and they want to reimburse network members, they, of course, they are welcome to. It's just that we aren't relying on that. We aren't reliant on that in order to exist, which I feel is incredibly important. Okay, I've spoken enough, and thank you very much for your time.